He had already failed one daughter. He told himself he would not get attached. Then a little girl with old eyes looked up at him from the dirt and said, "You promised you wouldn't leave me." Some promises, it turns out, are the ones that save us. This channel is a home for stories from the heart of the West, tales of wandering souls who find their purpose, of love that grows in the most unexpected places, and of the quiet heroism that lives in ordinary people, pushed to extraordinary moments. Sometimes the person you are trying to save is the very one saving you. If Caleb's story moved you, give this a like. Share it with someone carrying old guilt. Leave your thoughts below and subscribe. Because every story we tell here is a story about what makes us human.
The Arizona sun was still hiding behind the eastern mountains when death paid a visit to the Mercer Ranch. It came on horseback. 4 riders moving through the gray light of dawn like ghosts who'd found a purpose. The whole desert seemed to hold its breath. Even the coyotes went quiet. Lily Mercer was 9 years old, and she'd remember every last sound of it. She was scrunched under the wagon when the first shot tore the morning in two. Her daddy had shoved her there not a minute before, his hands shaking as he pushed her down in the dust. But his voice, it was steady as a rock. "You stay right here. Don't matter what you hear. You stay put. Promise your daddy." She promised. So now she was lying in that tight space between the ground and the wagon boards, her cheek cold against the night-chilled dirt. Through the cracks in the wood, she saw pieces of her world getting ripped apart. She saw boots, long shadows, and the bottom of a green dress catching the first bit of sun. The boots walked on by, men's voices low and hurried. Then a woman's voice, fancy and cold as a winter creek. "You had a choice, Joseph. You chose wrong." That was her daddy's name, Joseph. Lily's fingers found the little wooden cross around her neck, the one her mama gave her for Christmas. She squeezed it so tight the sharp edges dug into her skin. Her daddy's voice came next, rough with desperation. "The child, please. She ain't done nothing." The woman let out a soft laugh, almost a sweet sound. "There's no such thing as innocent in this, Joseph. You know that." Lily wanted to holler, wanted to bust out of there and run, wanted to do anything but lie in that dust with her heart pounding like a drum against her ribs. But she'd made a promise. Papa said, "Stay." So she stayed. The next gunshot was so loud it felt like it split her ears. A little whimper escaped her lips before she could catch it, but the noise of it all just swallowed it right up. More shots, men yelling, her mama's voice screaming her name, and then just stopping, all at once. Through the wagon slats, Lily saw her mama's hand fall down where she could see it. The wedding band on her finger caught a ray of sunlight, just a quick flash of gold against the brown dust. The hand never moved again. Lily bit down on her own fist to keep the noise inside, tasting blood and dirt and pure fear. Heavy boots walked toward the wagon. A man's voice, all scratchy and unsure. "Should we check under there?" Then the woman's voice, closer this time. A perfume smell drifted down through the planks. Roses, sweet and thick and so wrong in a place full of death. "No, we have to ride. I hear folks coming from the east." Gunfire popped off in the distance from a whole other direction. The men cursed and scrambled for their horses. In a few seconds, there was just the thunder of hooves getting farther away. And then silence. The awful, total silence of a world that had just ended before the sun was even all the way up. Lily stayed under that wagon. Minutes crawled by, maybe it was hours. She had no idea. Time had turned into something strange, stretching out long and then snapping back short. The sun got higher. The blood in the dirt started to get dark and crusty. Flies came, buzzing loud in the quiet. She stayed because her papa told her to. After a while, she started humming an old lullaby her mama used to sing. The little tune helped push back the big silence, helped keep the scream locked up tight inside her chest. Her fingers found little rocks in the dirt, and she started making patterns with them. Anything to keep her hands moving. Anything to stop thinking about that hand with the wedding ring that wasn't moving anymore. The sun was straight overhead when she heard another horse. Just one this time. It was moving slow, careful-like. The rider got down. Footsteps, quiet and measured. A man's voice talking low to himself. "Dear Lord." More footsteps. The sound of a heavy blanket being unfolded. Lily knew what he was doing without even looking. She knew he was covering up the bodies. He was putting blankets over her people, the folks who'd never get up again. The kindness of that act made something inside her chest crack wide open. She kept humming, kept arranging her pebbles, kept staying in her little space under the wagon because the world outside. Caleb Roar had been riding by his lonesome for 6 days when he stumbled upon the whole mess. He'd been tracking stolen horses, following a cold trail through country that could kill a man a dozen ways. He was bone-tired and running low on supplies, and all he wanted was to finish the job and find a saloon with some halfway decent whiskey. Finding a whole murdered family was not part of his plan. He'd seen his share of death, more than his share. The war had taught him what men would do to one another when they stopped seeing the human in each other. His years as a U.S. Marshal had taught him that the war never truly ended. It just moved out west and wore a different hat. But this, 6 people, shot down with the cold precision of a business deal. And a little girl, somehow still alive, sitting under a wagon and arranging pebbles while her whole world was on fire. Caleb's own daughter had been 7 when she died. A fever took her in 3 days, just burned her up from the inside out while Caleb was 200 miles away chasing some outlaw who wasn't worth the powder it took to bring him in. He'd come home to a wife with red eyes and a quiet house and a tiny coffin that felt way too light when he helped carry it to the churchyard. Anna. Her name was Anna. She used to draw him pictures of horses and flowers and the big family she was going to have one day. Caleb still had those drawings, wrapped up in oilcloth and buried deep in his saddlebag where he wouldn't have to lay eyes on them every day. He looked at the girl under the wagon, and he saw Anna's ghost looking right back at him. "Stop it," he told himself. "This ain't her. This is somebody else's little girl, somebody else's pain." But his hands were gentle as he finally talked Lily out from under that wagon. She was covered in filth, thirsty, and shaken even in the heat. He wrapped her up in his big coat, gave her sips of water from his canteen, and tried not to think about how small and light she felt. "What's your name, child?" "Lily. Lily Mercer." He nodded. "Lily. That's a good, strong name. I'm going to help you, Lily. I promise you that." She just looked at him with those eyes that had seen way too much, eyes that had gotten a lifetime older in a single morning. Promises, those eyes said, don't mean a whole lot anymore. Fair enough, Caleb thought. He looked her over real careful. No cuts he could see, though she had bruises on her arms where someone had grabbed her, likely her daddy pushing her to safety. No blood on her except for what she'd crawled through. The real hurt was all on the inside in places that wouldn't show for years to come. "Can you tell me what happened?" Lily's voice was flat, just saying the facts so she wouldn't have to feel them. "They came at sunrise. 4 horses, maybe 5. I couldn't see 'em all. Papa made me hide." Caleb just waited. Being quiet was a tool he'd learned to use real well. "The lady," Lily went on after a bit, "she wore a green dress and she smelled like roses. She was talking to Papa, said he was protecting the wrong people. Papa said he was just protecting his family. She said no, he was protecting a lie. A woman leading a slaughter." Caleb tucked that away with the green dress and the roses, details that might mean something later. "Do you know what lie she was talking about?" Lily shook her head. "But Papa worked at the land office in Prescott. He saw bad things going on. He tried to tell people, but nobody would listen. The land office, crooked land deals were as common as dirt out here, and twice as nasty. But most of those fights ended up in a courtroom, not with 6 bodies getting cold in the desert sun." Caleb stood up and looked over the whole scene with a lawman's eye. The folks had been killed execution style. Close up, no hesitation. Whoever did this was practiced at it. The wagons had been tossed good before they were set on fire, though the flames hadn't really taken hold. They were looking for something. He walked the edge of the yard, reading the story in the dirt. 4 horses, just like Lily said. All of them wearing shoes and well-fed, judging by how deep their tracks were. They'd come from the south and rode out west, but there was something else. A 5th set of tracks, made after the others had already gone. A single rider moving slow. This person had walked right up to the bodies, got off his horse and spent some time there. Caleb followed those tracks right to the nearest body and found what he was expecting. Someone had laid blankets, pulled from the burned-out wagons, over the folks who had passed. They'd been arranged with care, and a Bible was placed right on Joseph Mercer's chest. Caleb reached down and picked up that Bible. It was already open, with a piece of torn cloth marking a spot. Ezekiel, chapter 22, verse 30. I looked for someone among them who would build up the wall and stand before me in the gap on behalf of the land. Somebody had respected Joseph Mercer enough to give him his last rites. Somebody who understood what that man had been trying to do. Lily came up beside him, quiet as a whisper. Without him asking, she read the words aloud. Papa used to read that one. He said it was about standing up when nobody else has the grit to do it. Caleb looked down at the girl, just 9 years old and already reading scripture. Understanding the deeper meaning, and handling all this hurt with a smarts that made his own chest feel tight. Your daddy was a brave man. Lily didn't say anything. Her eyes just got that far-off look again, going back to that quiet place inside herself where the pain couldn't quite get to her. Right then, Caleb made up his mind. The easy thing to do would be to ride her into Prescott, hand her off to the sheriff, and be done with the whole mess. But easy and right ain't always the same thing. And Caleb had spent 4 hard years learning that lesson. He had to know who that mysterious 5th rider was. He had to figure out what Joseph Mercer was protecting, and he had to keep this small, tough-as-nails little girl alive long enough to get some answers. Lily, he said, his voice low. Did your father have any friends? Folks he trusted? Lily gave it some thought. There's Uncle Isaiah, Mama's brother. But they had a big falling out years back. We never saw him after that. What was the fight about? Lily just shrugged, a little motion that looked way too heavy on her small shoulders. Mama said Uncle Isaiah wanted her to quit fighting, said justice wasn't worth dying for. But Mama said some things were. A cold feeling settled deep in Caleb's gut. What kind of justice? I don't know. Mama never told me the whole story. Just that somebody hurt Grandpa real bad, and the person who did it never paid for it. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to come together, and they were forming a picture Caleb surely didn't like. A woman trying to get justice for her father, and a husband working down at the land office, digging up proof. And now both of them were gone, killed by men who knew their business and didn't leave anyone behind. Except they had left one person. They just didn't know it yet. We can't go to Prescott, Caleb said. Not right now. Lily's head shot up. Why not? Because you mentioned the lady talked about a sheriff. That tells me the law might be tangled up in this. We can't trust the usual folks. So where are we going to go? Caleb thought about Uncle Isaiah, just a name with no face and no town attached. But Lily said he was her mother's brother, and Margaret Mercer had spoken of him with respect, even after they'd argued. That pointed to a man from the military or law enforcement, somebody who put duty first, even if it cost him his own family. It was a long shot, but Caleb had won on longer ones before. How much can you remember about your uncle? Not much. Mama had a picture, but I reckon it burned up. Her voice trembled a little on that last part. Do you have any idea where he might be? Lily shut her eyes, trying to think hard. Mama said one time that Isaiah chose the army over his family, that he went out west to forget about the army. Well, that narrowed things down some. There were only so many forts in the Arizona Territory. And if Margaret said he chose the army, the odds were good he was still wearing the uniform. Caleb took out his map and spread it on his knee. The closest fort was Denison, about 60 miles to the north. It was under federal control, which meant it was a whole lot harder for local crooks to get their hands on it. And if Isaiah Brennan was stationed there, they might just find a safe place, might being the key word. "Can you ride a horse?" Lily nodded. "Papa taught me." "Then we ride." Caleb folded the map. "We'll make for Fort Denison. It's federal land, a sight safer than any of these towns." "What about Mama and Papa?" Caleb looked over at the bodies under the blankets, at the Bible still resting on Joseph's chest. Someone had already given them all the dignity this hard country had to offer. Taking the time for a proper burial would cost them hours they likely didn't have. "I'll mark the spot. When all this is finished, we'll come back for them, give them a proper place to rest." Lily's face was a blank slate. "When this is over? You really think it's going to be over?" "I reckon it's got to be, sooner or later." She didn't seem too sure about that, but she nodded her head anyway, taking his words even if she didn't quite believe them. They rode north as the sun started to dip low in the sky. Caleb kept them off the main roads, using old tricks he knew as a marshal to cover their tracks. Lily rode behind him, her little arms wrapped tight around his middle, quiet as a shadow. The land out here was tough. Red rock and scrub brush, with a few juniper trees here and there offering a bit of shade. The heat came up from the ground in wavy lines, making the horizon look like it was melting. Caleb's horse, a tough black gelding he called Soot, just kept plodding along with the kind of patience you only see in an animal that knows trying to hurry out here is a good way to die. They saw the riders just as the sun was setting. Two of them, sitting on their horses way off on a ridge, not coming any closer, just watching. Caleb couldn't see them clearly from that far away, but he didn't have to. The message was plain as day. "We know right where you are." Lily's arms squeezed him tighter. "Are those the people?" "Maybe." Caleb kept his voice steady. "Could just be a couple of drifters. They're following us." "Sharp kid." "Yeah, they are. What are we going to do? We're going to keep moving. If they want to watch, let them watch. As long as they keep their distance, we'll be all right. And if they decide not to keep their distance, well, we'll handle that when it comes." Lily was quiet for a bit. Then she said, "You promise you won't leave me?" The question hit him harder than it had any right to. Caleb thought about Anna, about the promise he'd broken without ever meaning to. He thought about how heavy words can be when you say them to a child who believes every single one. "I promise." And this time, he was dead set on keeping it. They made camp that night in a tight little canyon hidden from view. Caleb didn't dare risk a fire. They ate cold jerky and hardtack, and drank water that had a taste of iron and dust. The stars started popping out one by one, shining brighter than you can imagine against that pitch-black sky. Lily sat with her back propped against a big rock, still holding on to that little wooden cross. In the starlight, her face looked like it was carved out of stone. "What happened to your daughter?" Caleb's hands stopped their work on the saddle he was checking. "How did you know I had a daughter?" "You look at me the same way Papa used to look at me, all sad and scared." Caleb let out a long, slow breath. Sharp didn't even begin to describe this kid. Her name was Anna. "A fever took her while I was away on duty. Do I remind you of her?" "No." He told her the truth because she deserved it. "You're nothing like her. She was soft where you're tough. She was scared of thunderstorms, and she'd cry whenever I had to leave for work." Lily took that in. "Then where were you when she died?" "I was chasing a man who'd robbed a stagecoach. I brought him in 2 days after I got the telegram saying she was sick. By the time I made it home, she was already in the ground." The quiet between them stretched on, full of all the things you just can't say out loud. "Do you wish you'd stayed home every single day?" Lily nodded, like this was just confirming something she'd already figured out. "You're here now. That's what's important." Caleb looked at her through the dark. This little girl, who had lost every single thing, was offering him forgiveness for sins she couldn't possibly understand. The simple kindness of it made his throat feel tight. "Yeah, I'm here now." They made it to Fort Denison 3 days later. The ride had been quiet but tense. The riders who were watching them had kept their distance, never getting closer but never leaving either. Caleb didn't know if that was a good sign or a bad one. He just knew it meant somebody was mighty interested in where they were headed. The fort sat up on a small hill, its adobe walls glowing like gold in the morning sun. The American flag was snapping in the breeze. Soldiers were drilling out in the main yard, their movements all sharp and practiced. It looked like order, like a little piece of civilization in a country that didn't have much of either. Caleb rode up to the main gate with Lily still sitting behind him. The sentries watched them come with that bored, watchful look of men who have stood at that post 1,000 times. "State your business." Caleb kept his hands where they could be seen, his voice even. "Marshal Caleb Rohr, retired. I need a word with your commanding officer. It's federal business." The sergeant squinted down at him. "You got papers?" Caleb pulled out his old badge. It was tarnished, but it still had the that seal. The sergeant gave it a good look, and then his eyes settled on Lily with a new kind of intensity. "What kind of federal business we talking about?" "A massacre. 6 people dead, with a child as the only witness. I need to have a word with Captain Brennan." The sergeant's whole look changed right then. Something moved behind his gaze. Maybe he recognized something, or maybe it was worry. He mumbled something to another soldier, then looked back at us. "Y'all wait right here." So we waited in that dusty yard while they sent runners off. Soldiers walked by, throwing curious looks at the road-weary man and the little girl who was sitting so quiet it just wasn't right. Caleb was already counting the ways out, mapping the place in his head, and sizing up any trouble. It was an old habit. Lily sat beside him without a word, her little hand still wrapped tight around that wooden cross. The captain came out of the headquarters building. He was a tall, skinny fella, his uniform looking sharp even in the heat. He walked with that stiff army way about him, but his face was mighty pale. The moment his eyes landed on Lily, he stopped dead in his tracks like he'd run into a brick wall. "My God." Caleb's hand moved toward his pistol out of pure instinct. "Captain Brennan." The captain seemed to snap back to where he was. "Yes, I'm Isaiah Brennan. You had some federal business to discuss." Caleb swung down from his horse and helped Lily to the ground. "The Mercer family, they were all killed 4 days ago. This is Lily Mercer. She is the only one who made it out." Isaiah Brennan's face went from pale to ghost white. He stared at Lily like she was a spirit come back to haunt him. Lily just looked right back at him with those old soul eyes. "Do I know you, mister?" Brennan knelt down, getting on her level. When he finally spoke, his voice was all rough, like he was trying to hold back a flood of feeling. "You wouldn't remember me. We met one time, but you were just a tiny thing. Who are you?" Brennan glanced at Caleb, then his eyes went back to Lily. And then he said the words that turned everything on its head. "My name is Isaiah Brennan. Margaret Brennan was my sister. Child. That makes you my niece." It felt like the whole world just stopped and held its breath. Lily's face didn't change one bit. No shock, no happiness, no fear. Just that awful stillness that comes when a soul has seen too much to feel anything new. "Mama never told me I had an uncle." The pain that shot across Brennan's face was so sharp you could almost see it. "I know. We had a falling out some years back. I thought I was doing the right thing. I was dead wrong." Caleb watched this whole family reunion unfold with a bad feeling growing in his gut. He didn't much believe in coincidences. Stumbling into a stranger was one thing, but finding the one fort in the whole territory, run by Lily's long-lost uncle, that smelled like it was planned. "Captain, we need to talk in private." Brennan stood up straight, his commanding voice coming back. "Of course. Sergeant, take Miss Mercer to the officer's family quarters. See that she gets some food, water, and clean clothes. You treat her as my personal guest." The sergeant gave a salute. "Yes, sir." Lily looked over at Caleb, and for the first time, a little bit of fear finally showed in her eyes. "You'll be close by?" "I'm not going anywhere." Caleb knelt down next to her, looking her straight in the eye. You're safe in here. I give you my word. You promised you wouldn't leave me. I am not leaving. I'm just going to talk with your uncle. You'll be able to see me from the window. Okay. Lily thought about that for a second. Then, at last, she gave a little nod. The sergeant led her off, her tiny shape vanishing inside the fort. Brennan watched her go, and for a moment his hard expression just seemed to crumble. Then he turned to Caleb. My office. Now. Isaiah Brennan's office didn't have much to it. Just a desk, 2 chairs, and a big map of the territory hanging on one wall. The only thing personal was a framed photograph. It showed 3 younger people, a man, a woman, and another man dressed in regular clothes. Caleb recognized the woman right away. It was Margaret Mercer before she was a Mercer, looking younger and smiling. Standing next to her was a young fella in an army uniform. That was Isaiah. And the third person was an older man with kind eyes and the clothes of a shopkeeper. Your father. Brennan had followed his gaze. Andrew Brennan. That's right. Been gone 5 years now. Caleb just waited. Brennan poured 2 glasses of whiskey from a bottle he kept in his desk and handed one to Caleb. Then he sat down hard, suddenly looking all of his 45 years. You want to know why Margaret and I weren't on speaking terms? I want to know if you had a hand in her death. Brennan's head snapped up, his eyes flashing with anger. But just as fast, the fire went out. He took a long pull from his glass. That is a fair question. The answer is no, but I might as well have. He got up and walked over to the window, looking out at the parade ground where soldiers were drilling in the afternoon sun. Our father was a merchant back in St. Louis, an honest man, made a decent living off railroad contracts. Back in 1876, he found out his business partner was stealing tens of thousands of dollars from him. Let me take a guess. He tried to turn him in. He tried, and he failed. The partner had powerful friends. He cooked up some fake evidence that made it look like my father was the real thief. Andrew Brennan was ruined. He lost every last thing. 6 months later, his heart just gave out. We always knew it was a broken heart that killed him. Caleb took a sip of his whiskey. And this partner? Lawrence Gaines. Brennan's voice was flat and hard. He took all that money and ran out west. By the time we could prove what he'd done, he'd vanished into the Arizona territory. Got himself a job at the Territorial Land Office. He built a whole new empire for himself on our stolen money and fake papers. Margaret wanted revenge. Margaret wanted justice. Brennan turned away from the window. She followed Gaines all the way out here. She married Joseph Mercer because he had a job at the land office. She spent years digging up evidence on Gaines, and I told her to just let it go. Why would you do that? Because our father was already gone. Because going after Gaines wouldn't bring him back. Because I figured the law would just let us down again, and she would get herself killed for nothing. Brennan's jaw was clenched tight. I chose to just let it lie, to move on with my life, and I called her a fool for not doing the same. When was the last time you spoke with her? 5 years ago, we had the same argument over and over again. Finally, she told me that if I wasn't going to help her, I should just stay out of her life. So I did. Brennan's hands balled into fists. And now she is dead, and I was not there for her. The pain in his voice was real. Caleb had heard his share of fake sorrow to know the difference. Tell me about Lawrence Gaines. Brennan went back to his desk and pulled out a file. Lawrence Gaines. He is 62 years old, the director of the Territorial Land Office. He manages all the mining and property claims for 3 whole counties. To the public, he is known for being thorough and fair. In private, he runs one of the most crooked outfits in the entire territory. Do you have proof? Nothing that would ever hold up in a courtroom. Just rumors, whispers, and a few brave folks who filed complaints only to mysteriously take them back. Brennan laid some papers out on his desk. Margaret sent me these last month. This is the evidence she collected. Fake claims, records of bribes, shell companies. It is all right here. Then why didn't she just file charges? She tried to. The federal prosecutor is deep in Gaines's pocket. The judges are all put there by men that Gaines has something on. She needed something much bigger, something that they couldn't just sweep under the rug. And she thought she had found it. Brennan nodded. 3 weeks ago, she sent me a telegram. She said she had it, the real proof. Documents that would not only take down Gaines, but half the territorial government along with him. She was planning to take it to the newspapers back east, to make it so public they could not bury the story. Caleb thought about the burned-out wagons and the ransacked belongings. They were looking for those papers, and they killed every last person to make sure they got them. Brennan's face looked like it was carved out of stone. My sister died for a pile of papers. Your sister died trying to get justice for your father. Caleb stood up. Is there a difference? What difference does it make if she is still dead? It makes a world of difference to Lily. Brennan flinched like he had been slapped. Caleb pushed on. That little girl watched her own parents get murdered. She hid under a wagon for 6 hours, listening to her mother's blood dry in the dust. You think she gives a damn about some papers? She needs to know that her mother died for a reason, that her sacrifice meant something. And what if it did not? What if Margaret was wrong? What if Gaines gets away with it anyway? Then we make sure he does not. Brennan stared at him. You are retired. This is not your jurisdiction. This is not your fight. That little girl made it my fight the second she trusted me to keep her safe. They looked at each other from across the desk. 2 men, each carrying his own kind of grief, brought together by a 9-year-old girl who had lost everything. At last, Brennan gave a nod. Then we need to find those documents. If Margaret hid them, she hid them well. The question is where. Caleb thought about that mysterious 5th rider, the one who had covered the bodies and left the Bible. Somebody who respected Joseph. Somebody who knew what he was trying to do. Somebody who might just know where that evidence was stashed. There is someone else mixed up in this. Someone who showed up after the killing. They covered the bodies and left a Bible. Brennan's eyes got sharp. You saw this? Fresh tracks. And the Bible was left open to a certain page, like it was a message. What passage was it? Ezekiel. The part about standing in the gap. Brennan paused for a moment, choosing his words carefully. Well, that was Joseph's favorite verse. He used to say it all the time when folks told him to give up his fight. So whoever left that Bible knew Joseph personally. They knew what he believed in, and they might know where he hid the proof. They looked at each other, the pieces finally starting to fit. The question is, Caleb said quietly, do they want us to find it, or are they trying to warn us off? Before Brennan could say a word, there was a knock on the door. The sergeant came in and saluted. Sir, we've got riders coming in from the south. 4 of them. They are flying a white flag. Caleb and Brennan shared a look. 4 riders. Let them in, Brennan ordered. But you keep the men on their toes. The sergeant saluted and walked out. Caleb checked the rounds in his revolver. It was a habit so old he did not even have to think about it. Brennan did the seal. They waited. The woman who walked in was a picture of elegance, even in her riding clothes. She was in her late 30s with dark hair pulled back in a neat bun. She had on a green dress that was dusty from the road, and when she moved, she brought the smell of roses with her. Caleb's hand went straight to his gun. The woman smiled, but that smile didn't quite make it to her eyes. Captain Brennan, thank you for agreeing to see me. My name is Vivian Gaines. I do believe you have something that belongs to me. Lily was watching from the window of her room as the woman in the green dress came into the fort. Even this far away, even after 4 days, she knew the way that woman walked. It was confident, sure of herself, like death walking on 2 feet. The lady with the roses had come to the fort. And Lily knew, with the awful certainty of a child who had already learned the world's hardest lessons, that no place was really safe, that the monsters were real, and they don't stop hunting you just because you found some walls to hide behind. She held her little wooden cross even tighter and whispered a prayer her mother had taught her. Down in the office below, Caleb Rohr met Vivian Gaines's smile with cold eyes and a hand on his gun. He understood that the real fight was only just getting started. The little girl in the dust had found her voice. Now she needed her justice. And Caleb Rohr, who had failed one daughter, made a silent vow to himself that he would not fail another. no matter the price. Vivian Gaines filled the doorway of Captain Brennan's office, carrying herself like she owned the room and the whole fort it sat in. Road dust clung to her green dress, but she wore it with a confidence that said she was born to give orders, not take them. Her dark hair was pulled back tight, showing a face that could have been pretty if it was not so hard. A powerful smell of roses walked in ahead of her. Caleb kept his hand resting on his gun. A lifetime of knowing bad men screamed at him that he was looking at something far more dangerous. This was a woman who would kill you as easy as waving away a fly. Captain Brennan got to his feet, his posture stiff and by the book. He said, "Mrs. Gaines, we were not expecting you." She gave a smile that never reached her eyes. "Were you not? I would think my visit makes perfect sense. You are holding on to federal evidence. I am here to collect it." "Federal evidence?" Brennan asked. "And what evidence might that be?" Vivian's gaze jumped to Caleb, sizing him up in a heartbeat. "You must be the one who found the little girl." Marshal Rohr. "Retired, I understand." Caleb did not say a word. Being quiet was usually the best play against folks who loved to hear themselves talk. The strong, silent kind. How novel. Vivian glided into the office, each step measured and sure. "Let us be plain, gentlemen. What happened at the Mercer place was a terrible thing, most likely the work of local bandits. A real shame about that poor family." "Bandits do not line people up and shoot them," Caleb said, his voice low. "No? And what makes you an expert on such things, Mr. Rohr, after 14 years as a U.S. Marshal? I have seen enough killing to tell the difference between a robbery and a hit." Vivian's smile stayed put. "A hit? My, what a harsh word. The Mercers had made enemies, Mr. Rohr. Joseph was spreading all sorts of wild stories about my husband, trying to ruin the name of a good man. That kind of talk has consequences. So your husband paid to have a whole family wiped out over some gossip? I did not say that." Vivian picked at a piece of lint on her glove. "I am just giving you the bigger picture. Joseph Mercer was not stable. His wife fed him crazy ideas about my husband. It is a tragedy that their own wild notions got them killed." Brennan's voice was pure ice. "Margaret was not crazy. She was my sister." For a second, Vivian's mask slipped and she looked genuinely surprised. "Your sister? Well, isn't that something? Then you, of all people, know how fixated she got, seeing ghosts where there were not any, and yelling about corruption where there was just honest work. The evidence tells a different story." "What evidence?" Vivian's voice grew sharp. "The wild papers of Joseph Mercer? Stories anyone could have made up." "Captain Brennan, a smart man like you must know that sorrow can make a person see things that just are not there. The proof my sister spent 5 years putting together." Caleb watched Vivian's face, not missing a thing. Proof of fraud, fake mining claims, and money paid to federal men. Vivian went completely still. If papers like that existed, which they do not, they would be stolen. My husband's private business papers taken against the law. "So, you are saying the papers are real?" "I am saying nothing." Vivian's composure finally cracked, just for a second, and a dangerous light flashed in her eyes. "I am here as a courtesy, gentlemen, to remind you that holding stolen papers is a federal offense, and that the child, Lily Mercer, is a scared little girl who cannot be trusted to tell the truth." Caleb took a half-step forward. His voice was quiet, which made it sound a whole lot meaner. "You came all this way to scare a 9-year-old girl. I came to offer my protection." Vivian's calm expression snapped back into place. "That poor child has been through a nightmare. She needs good care, doctors, someone to help with her fantasies. She is not having fantasies. Is she not? She is a child who says she saw a terrible crime from under a wagon. She cannot even name a face, but she is sure she knows what went on." Vivian shook her head with fake sadness. The mind does strange things, Mr. Roar, especially a young mind after a shock. No court in this land would listen to her. We will let a judge figure that out. Will you now? And which judge will that be? Judge Morrison, who got his job because my husband put in a good word? Or maybe Judge Talbot, whose boy has a nice job at the land office? Vivian smiled again. You are in Arizona territory, gentlemen. This is not back east. Out here, the law is whatever Lawrence Gaines says it is. Her words hung in the quiet room like a dare. Brennan spoke slowly and clearly. If you are done making threats on a federal post, Mrs. Gaines, I think it is time for you to go. Of course. Vivian started for the door, but then stopped. One last thing. The girl, Lily. Is she doing all right? Is she getting enough sleep? Caleb's hand squeezed the handle of his pistol. You stay clear of her. Such anger. I only want to make sure she is safe. Vivian's eyes were like flat, dead stones. Children can be so delicate. Accidents can happen even on a military fort. Get out, Brennan ordered. Vivian gave a polite nod. Gentlemen, you think on what I have said. My offer of protection is still good for a little while. She left, but the smell of roses stayed behind like a warning. Caleb waited to hear her boots fade down the hall before he spoke. She knows we do not have the papers. Brennan nodded, his face grim. Which means she is still hunting for them, and she will run over anyone who gets in her way, Lily included. Especially Lily. That child is the only one who can put Vivian at that ranch. As long as Lily is breathing, Vivian has a problem she needs to solve. Caleb walked to the window and watched Vivian get on her horse in the yard down below. 3 men waited for her, all of them armed, all of them watching the fort like coyotes watch a hen house. We have got to find those papers before she does, and we have to keep Lily out of harm's way while we do it. Caleb turned back from the window. And there is something else. She named Judge Morrison and Judge Talbot on purpose. She wanted us to know just how deep the rot goes, trying to make us fold before we even play our hand. Is it hopeless? Brennan's jaw was set hard. No, but it is going to be a damn sight harder than I figured. A knock on the door broke the silence. Brennan's wife came in, a woman in her late 30s with smart eyes and hands that looked like they knew hard work. She took one look at the two of them and knew something was wrong. Constance, Brennan said, this is Marshal Roar. Roar, my wife, Constance. Brennan gave Caleb a nod, then looked at his wife. The little girl is asking for Mr. Roar. She says she will not eat a bite till she sees him. Caleb felt a knot tighten in his gut. I will go on up to her. I will go with you, Constance said. We ought to talk about what is best for her. They left Brennan with his maps and his heavy thoughts, climbing the stairs to where the family lived. Constance walked with the sure step of a woman who was nobody's fool. She is scared, Constance said in a low voice, trying her best not to let on, but she is terrified. She watched her own parents get shot down. I know, and now she's in a new place with folks she does not know from Adam. You are the only steady thing she has got right now. I am not her kin. No, but you are the one who pulled her out of there. You are the one who brought her to safety. That means the world to a kid. They got to the room. Constance tapped lightly on the door before they went in. Lily was sitting on a bed that was way too big for her, still holding on to that little wooden cross. She was clean and had on fresh clothes, but her eyes had that same far-off, haunted look. When she spotted Caleb, her whole face lit up with relief. You came? I said I would, did not I? Caleb pulled a chair up next to the bed. How are you holding up? Lily thought about it with a seriousness that was unsettling in a child. The lady who smells like roses was here. I know. I saw her from the window. Lily's little fingers traced the shape of the cross. She walks like she owns the whole world, like nobody can do a thing to her. Constance sat down on the other side of the bed. Did you know her voice? Lily nodded her head real slow. She was the one who said there are no innocents, the one who told them what to do. Caleb and Constance shared a look. Lily, Caleb said gently, I need you to think real hard. Can you remember anything else from that morning? Anything at all? Lily squeezed her eyes shut. Caleb just watched her, saw her go back to that awful place in her mind. A long minute passed before she spoke. There were 5 horses, not 4. I said 4 because I only saw 4 before Papa pushed me down to hide. But I heard 5. 5 riders. That was one more than Vivian had with her at the fort. The 5th one, Lily went on, her eyes still shut tight. He came after the shooting had stopped. I heard his horse. It sounded different, bigger, and the rider, his boots on the ground, sounded different too. Slower, like he was taking it all in. That was the one who covered the bodies, Caleb said, more to himself than to her. Lily's eyes opened. He put Mama's hands together like she was praying, and he laid Papa's Bible on his chest. He was someone who cared. Caleb tucked that piece of information away. Do you remember anything else? Any other voices? Lily got a confused look on her face. There was arguing before it all started. The Rose Lady said, "You were told to burn those records." Papa told her, "I kept them as a guarantee against your kind." "Records," Constance whispered. "The proof Margaret found." Lily kept going. Papa said one more thing. He said, "Even if you get me, the truth is already put away safe. Someone else knows. Someone you will never find." Caleb's heart started to pound. Somebody else has the evidence, or at least knows where it is. Lily looked from Caleb to Constance. "What does that mean?" "It means your daddy was one step ahead of them all." Caleb gave her small hand a gentle squeeze. He made sure the truth would get out, even if he did not. But who would he have trusted? Constance asked. If the lawmen are bought, if the judges are bought them, who was left to trust? Joseph looked over at Brennan, who had just appeared in the doorway. "I reckon I might know someone." They all met up in Brennan's office again, this time with Constance in the room. She stood quiet, listening to her husband explain everything he knew. He said Margaret's letters had mentioned a priest. Brennan laid some papers out on his big desk. Father Domingo Salazar. He runs a little mission church about 20 miles south of the Mercer Ranch. Joseph and Margaret used to go to his services. "A priest makes a whole lot of sense," Constance said. "He would be bound by the seal of confession. They couldn't force him to talk, not even with threats. And he'd be someone Joseph would trust with his life." Caleb looked hard at the map. 20 miles south. That's mighty close to where the tracks of that 5th rider started. Brennan gave a slow nod. "I'm sending some boys down to the mission tomorrow morning. The official reason is to check on how the folks there are doing. The real reason is to have a talk with Father Salazar. I ought to go with them. You are not with the military. I am the one Lily trusts. If that priest has the proof, he is going to want to know she is safe before he even thinks about handing it over." Brennan thought on it for a moment. "Fine, but you are taking Sergeant Cooper and 4 of his men. This is not a friendly chat." "Agreed." Constance finally spoke up. "And what about Vivian? She will be watching this fort like a hawk." "Let her watch." Brennan's voice turned to stone. "She threatened a child on federal land. That gives me all the reason I need to keep her away. She will not get within 100 yards of Lily, and when you leave," Constance said, looking right at Caleb. "When you head out to that mission, Lily is staying right here." Caleb met her gaze. "With you?" Constance nodded, her face set. "I was a nurse back during the Apache campaigns. I know my way around a rifle, and I sure as heck know how to protect people I care about." The pure grit in her voice was all the proof Caleb needed that he had put his trust in the right place. Fort Denison might have corruption all around it, but inside these walls there were still good people who believed in doing the right thing. The next 3 days settled into a kind of rhythm. In the mornings, Caleb would be with Lily, teaching her all the things his own daughter, Anna, never got the chance to learn. Things like how to read the weather from the clouds, how to find your way using the sun, and how to walk through a room without making a sound. Lily took it all in with that steady, serious focus of hers. You hardly ever saw her smile or show much of anything other than that watchful stillness. But every now and again, when Caleb would praise her for picking something up so fast, he would see a little flicker of pride in her eyes. It was a peek at the little girl she could have been, if the world had not been so cruel as to steal her childhood away. He spent his afternoons with Brennan, digging through all of Margaret's papers, drawing lines between names and places, trying to build a case that could stand up in a courtroom, if they could ever find one that was honest. The evenings were for quiet talks with Constance, who had taken to Lily with the fierce protectiveness of a woman who had always wanted children but was never blessed with any. It was on that third evening that Constance finally told Caleb the whole truth. They were sitting up on the fort wall, just watching the sun bleed all over the desert in shades of orange and deep red. Down below, soldiers were running drills as the flag snapped and popped in the evening breeze. "I cannot have children," Constance said, "just like that. I had 3 pregnancies, but I lost them all before the 4th month. I am sorry. Do not be. That is an old sorrow now." Constance kept her eyes on Lily, who was playing a game of chess with a young soldier down in the courtyard. "But when I look at that child, I feel something I have not felt in a long, long time. I feel hope, a purpose." Constance gave a small smile. "Isaiah feels it too, even though he would die before he said it out loud. The guilt from failing Margaret is just eating him up inside. Protecting Lily is his one shot at finding some peace. What if we cannot protect her?" Caleb finally said the fear that always woke him up at 3 in the morning. "What if Vivian is right and the whole system is just too rotten? Then we burn the system to the ground." Constance's voice was as calm as a summer morning, but her eyes were like flint. "My father was a Union officer who fought at Shiloh. He taught me that some fights you have to take on, because losing is a whole lot worse than dying. You sound like Margaret. I surely wish I had known her. From what Isaiah has told me, she was one of a kind. She was also dead, killed because she fought a battle she could not win." Constance turned to look him square in the eye. "But she hurt them. She made them desperate enough to show their true colors. Vivian riding in here, making threats in the middle of the day. That is not a sign of strength. That is fear. Fear of what? Of you. Of that little girl down there who refuses to forget what she saw. Of the truth that Margaret spent 5 long years writing down." Constance pointed down at Lily. "That child is 9 years old, and she is already braver than most grown men I have ever known. Do you really think she is going to give up just because someone threatens her? I think she should not have to fight this fight at all. No, she should not, but she is. And the real question is not whether we can shield her from everything. The question is whether we can give her the tools she needs to protect herself." They sat there in a comfortable quiet, watching as Lily took her opponent's knight with a quick, clean move. The soldier just laughed and tipped over his king. Lily's face showed just the slightest hint of satisfaction. "You are right," he said at last. "She is not Anna. She is stronger than Anna ever had the chance to be. Then you need to stop trying to shelter her like she is Anna. You need to start getting her ready for the fighter she is becoming." Those words hit him harder than he expected. Caleb finally understood that he had been trying to save a part of Lily that was already gone. Her innocence died out there under that wagon. What was left was something tougher, sharper, and a lot more dangerous. Something that just might be able to survive. On the morning of the 4th day, Caleb rode out with Sergeant Cooper and 4 other soldiers. They took off well before sunrise. Caleb had already said his goodbyes to Lily the night before. She had been so serious about it all. "Of course you have to go. You are looking for the truth. I will be back in 3 days, maybe even sooner. I know." Lily had squeezed his hand tight. "Just do not promise me you will be safe. I do not want to hear any more broken promises." The pure honesty of that just about broke his heart. "I will be as careful as a man can be. That is good enough." Now he was riding through land that got meaner with every mile. The red rock turned to black volcanic stone, and what little green there was clung to life like it was defying all common sense. Sergeant Cooper was a quiet man, probably in his 50s, a career army man who followed his orders to the letter but clearly thought this whole trip was a fool's errand. "Marshal," Cooper said, when they stopped to give the horses some water, "do you really believe a priest is just going to hand over evidence to a bunch of strangers? Not to strangers. To someone who can prove Lily is safe. And if he does not have it, then we have wasted 3 days. But I do not think we have." Cooper just grunted. "In my experience, when regular folks get tangled up in corruption investigations, they usually end up dead. Just saying." Joseph and Margaret knew the risks. Did they? Cooper checked his rifle. "Begging your pardon, sir. But there is a difference between knowing risks and truly understanding them. Most folks think they are brave right up until the moment of truth. Then they learn otherwise. You think they were cowards? I think they were townfolk playing at being soldiers, and they got themselves killed for it." Cooper's voice got a little softer then. "That little girl, though, she is something else. I saw her watching the men drill yesterday, just taking it all in, making notes in her head. That is a survivor right there. She's 9 years old. Age does not mean a thing. I have seen grown men fall apart under a lot less pressure. She has not broken. That means something." They got to the mission around mid-afternoon. It was a little adobe building, worn down by decades of hard sun and dry wind. A simple wooden cross was the only thing that marked it as a church. A few chickens were scratching around in the dusty yard. A small garden was putting up a brave fight against the heat. Father Domingo Salazar came out as they were getting off their horses. He was maybe 60 years old, with a face full of lines that told stories of hard years and even harder choices. His black robe was faded but clean. His eyes were sharp. "Soldiers," he said to greet them. "Welcome. We do not get too many visitors from the fort." "Father Salazar," Cooper said, "we are here on official business. This is Marshal Caleb Rohr." Salazar's face did not change one bit, but Caleb saw a flicker of knowing in his eyes. "Marshal Rohr. I have heard your name. You were the one who found the Mercer child." "I did. She is safe now at Fort Denison." "Is she?" Salazar motioned toward the church. "Maybe we ought to talk about this inside." The inside of the church was cool and dim and peaceful. Salazar lit a candle up at the altar, then he turned around to face them. "That child saw everything," Caleb said, his voice low. "She can name the model killers. And you expect me to share what Joseph told me in the sanctity of confession?" Salazar just shook his head. "I can't do that. My vows won't allow it. I am not asking you to break a holy vow. I am asking for your help to locate the evidence that Joseph and Margaret put together. What on earth makes you believe I would have something like that?" "Because Joseph told Vivian Gaines that the truth was already tucked away safe with someone she would never think to look for. Because the tracks from that awful scene lead straight to this mission. Because someone laid those poor people to rest with dignity and left a Bible open to Joseph's favorite passage." The priest looked at him, his eyes seeing right through to the man's soul. "So tell me, how is the child? Is she truly scarred by this? She is a brave little thing, far too young to be carrying such a heavy burden. And you, Marshal? What is your reason for being in this fight? I failed my own daughter once." "I will not fail another man's daughter." Salazar sized him up with eyes that had seen a lifetime of secrets. "Guilt is not the best reason for taking on guardianship, Marshal. It is the only reason I have. Well, perhaps." Salazar walked toward the altar, knelt for a moment in quiet prayer, and then rose to his feet. "Joseph Mercer was a fine man. He came to see me 6 months ago, telling me he had proof that could topple some very powerful, corrupt men. But he was worried for his family. He asked me to keep something for him. Do you still have it?" "I do. But before I hand it over, I have to be certain that little Lily is truly safe. I need to know that you can shield her from what is sure to follow. Vivian Gaines is already hunting for this for Dan. Very evidence. She has already made threats against the fort. Then you understand what you are up against. A woman who takes a life without a second thought, supported by a man who has endless money and no moral compass. Salazar's tone was heavy with concern. The moment I give this to you, Lily becomes the only person left alive who saw what happened. They will hunt her to the ends of the earth. They are already hunting her now. Yes, but as it stands, they are not sure if she really knows anything that can hurt them. Once this evidence comes out, they will know for sure, and they will stop at nothing to make sure she stays quiet forever. Caleb looked the priest straight in the eye. Then we will just have to make sure they cannot get to her. We will use this proof to bring them all down before they can cause any more harm. You place a great deal of trust in the justice system. I place my trust in giving a 9-year-old girl a chance to live a full life. Salazar gave a slow, deliberate nod. Follow me. He led Caleb by himself into a small chamber behind the altar, slid a loose stone from the wall, and pulled out a sealed leather satchel. Joseph gave this to me with very clear orders. It was only to be opened if something terrible happened to him and Margaret, and it was only to be given to a person who could be trusted to keep Lily safe. Caleb accepted the pouch. It felt much heavier than it looked. What is inside? The truth, Salazar said, his voice thick with sorrow. Joseph was a thorough man. Every crooked land claim, every bribe that was paid, every death that can be linked back to Lawrence Gaines and his greed, it is all written down in there. How many deaths are we talking about? 11 that we are aware of. Salazar made the sign of the cross. 11 people who got in his way. Every single one was passed off as an accident or a suicide. But they were all murders. And Vivian was the one who carried them out. Joseph had people who would testify. Folks who saw her near the locations or heard her making threats. It is all documented in there. Caleb broke the seal on the pouch. Inside, he found folders filled with documents, photographs, and ledgers detailing payments, alongside sworn statements that had been signed and witnessed. It was a file that held 5 years of Margaret Brennan Mercer's tireless work. This is more than enough to see them both hang. It is, if you can manage to get it before a court that they do not already own. If you can keep Lily alive long enough to tell her story. And if you can survive the all-out war they will bring down on anyone who dares to stand against them. Salazar's face looked worn and tired. Joseph understood the dangers. Margaret did too. But Lily never asked to be a part of this fight. No, but she is in the middle of it all the same. Then may God have mercy on you both. Salazar put a comforting hand on Caleb's shoulder. I will be praying for you, for her, and for justice to finally win the day. Just pray she is alive to witness it. They rode back toward the fort as fast as their horses could carry them. Sergeant Cooper could feel the urgency, even if he did not know all the reasons why. The leather pouch was stashed safely in Caleb's saddlebag, carrying a weight far greater than just paper and ink. It was not just evidence, it was a responsibility. Lily's entire future rested on what they did with that information. They were about 10 miles out from the fort when Cooper suddenly held up his hand. Riders. How many you figure? 3, maybe 4. They're coming in hot from the east. Could be an ambush, maybe. Or it could be they are running for their lives from something else. The riders came into clearer view. It was 3 men, their horses soaked in sweat, riding as if the devil himself was on their heels. As soon as they spotted the soldiers, they changed direction and headed right for them. Cooper's hand instinctively went to his rifle. Hold your fire. The man in the lead was just a boy, hardly 20 years old, with sheer terror in his eyes. Fort Dennis. Is it up this way? About 5 miles north. Cooper's voice was firm. What is the trouble? The young man's horse was trembling from exhaustion. Raiders. They hit the mission. Father Salazar. They killed him. A cold chill ran down Caleb's spine. When did this happen? An hour ago. Maybe not even that long. The young man's voice was shaky. We were out working the fields when we heard the gunshots. By the time we made it back, we saw 5 riders leaving. The father was already gone. Did you get a look at their faces? One of them was a woman. She had dark hair and a green dress. She looked right at us and smiled, a cold smile, like she wanted us to remember her face. Vivian. Cooper glanced over at Caleb. She knows you were there, which means she knows Salazar gave me something. Caleb's thoughts were racing. They will figure I'm taking it straight to the fort, which means, Cooper finished with a grim look, they will be camped out somewhere between us and safety. How many men does she have with her? Cooper thought for a moment. 4 with her at the fort. At least 5 at the mission. There could be others we have not seen yet. Against the 6 of us. The odds are not in our favor, the sergeant noted. But I have seen worse. Caleb looked at the 3 young riders. You 3, take our extra horses and ride for Tucson. Find the federal marshal's office there. Tell them everything. You witnessed. They are not going to believe a word we say. You make them believe you. Tell them Father Salazar has been murdered and that soldiers are heading straight into a trap. That ought to get their attention. The young men nodded, quickly mounted the fresh horses and galloped south. Cooper watched them disappear. You reckon they will make it? I reckon Vivian is hunting for bigger game right now. Us? Yep. Cooper managed a small, humorless grin. Well then, let us try not to disappoint the lady. They made their way toward the fort with caution, using every bit of cover the landscape provided. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows and painting the sky in shades of red and orange. It was the perfect time for an ambush. It happened when they were just 2 miles from the fort. The first shot took out one of Cooper's men before anyone even saw where it came from. The soldier simply slid off his horse without making a sound. The second bullet whizzed past as they all scattered for cover. Caleb spurred his horse toward a jumble of large rocks. Cooper and his remaining men were right behind him. They quickly set up a defensive circle, rifles at the ready. How many of them? Cooper asked. At least 4. Caleb had seen a quick flash from a rifle muzzle. They picked a good spot. They have got the high ground. So we will just wait them out. They know we have got what they are after. They will either get impatient and come to us, or they will wait for us to make a foolish move. The standoff dragged on. The minutes felt like they were turning into an hour. The sun finally dipped below the horizon. The coming darkness would offer new advantages and disadvantages for both sides. Then a voice echoed from the rocks high above them. Marshal Rourke, let us have a chat. Vivian Gaines stepped out from her hiding place, looking completely at ease, even though she was well within rifle range. She stood atop a large boulder, her figure a dark outline against the last rays of sunlight. Caleb remained behind the safety of the rocks. There is nothing to talk about. I would have to disagree. You have something in your possession that belongs to me. I would like it back. It was never yours to begin with. Let us not get caught up in the details. Vivian offered a slight smile. Here is how this is going to play out. You are going to hand over that pouch to me. In return, I will allow you and your soldiers to ride on to the fort. Nobody else has to get hurt today. And what about Lily? That child is clearly distressed and needs professional attention. I will make sure she receives it. By professional attention, you mean a 6-foot hole in the dirt. You hurt my feelings, Marshal. I have no argument with a 9-year-old girl. I am only interested in having stolen property returned to its rightful owner. Your husband forged every one of those documents. You are welcome to try and prove that in a courtroom full of judges and lawyers. Go right ahead. Vivian's voice dripped with sarcasm. Or you could face the facts. Lawrence Gaines owns this entire territory. You can choose to fight him and die, or you can choose to walk away and live. I have heard that kind of talk before. It comes from every crooked man who believed his power made him invincible. And how many of them are still in power? Fewer than you might imagine. Vivian's smile disappeared. This is your last opportunity, Marshal. The documents. Now. Caleb's response was not with words. but with the slow and steady raising of his rifle. The reaction from above was instant. Gunfire erupted from several different spots. Caleb and his soldiers returned fire with calm, precise shots. One of Vivian's men cried out and fell from his perch. Another one of Vivian's men dove for cover, hit hard, but they still had the numbers on us. Cooper cussed as a slug tore through his sleeve. "We ain't gonna hold this spot for long. We don't need to." Caleb nodded his head toward the fort. "They can see the gun smoke. Help's on the way. If it gets here in time, well then, we'll just have to make our own time." Caleb pulled out a leather satchel, holding it high for Vivian to get a good look. "You want this? Come on and get it." Then he heaved it. Not right at Vivian, but into the open dirt between them. That lit a fire under them. Vivian's crew broke from their cover, all scrambling to grab that satchel. It gave Cooper and his men clear shots. Two more of Vivian's bunch went down in the dust, but in all the commotion, Vivian herself got to the bag, snatched it up, and fell back behind a rock. Caleb watched her go, a cold sense of victory settling in his gut. Cooper just stared at him. "You just handed her all the proof." "No, I just handed her a dummy." "What in the world?" Caleb tapped his coat pocket. "The real proof is right here. What I tossed out there was just a bunch of blank paper in a look-alike bag." Cooper let out a laugh, even with bullets whizzing by. "You are one sly dog. I learned a thing or two from chasing even slyer ones." The shooting started to die down. Vivian's last few men were pulling back, giving her cover to get away. Far off, Caleb could see riders coming hard from the fort. Brennan had seen the fight after all. Vivian showed herself one last time, clutching the satchel. Even from that far off, her face was a picture of pure rage. When she tore it open and found nothing but blank sheets, her scream echoed clear across the plains. "This ain't over, Roar. I never figured it was." She spurred her horse into the growing twilight, her last men right behind her. Caleb watched them disappear, knowing this was just the first round. Brennan showed up with 20 soldiers. His face was a grim mask as he took in the mess. One man gone, 3 wounded, Cooper among them. What happened here? An ambush. Vivian was after the evidence. Caleb passed the real satchel to Brennan. "I made sure she didn't get it." Brennan opened it up, his eyes flying over the pages. The color drained from his face. "Good Lord, this is everything. This is what Joseph and Margaret gave their lives for. We've got to get this to someone who can do something with it. Someone Gaines hasn't already bought." Brennan gave a slow nod. "I know a man. A federal prosecutor over in Santa Fe. He's straight as an arrow, and he has a special distaste for corruption cases. How long will it take to get there? 3 days of hard riding. Then we best get a move on before Vivian pulls her crew back together." They rode back to the fort in a tight bunch, eyes peeled for another attack. But none came. Vivian was off somewhere, licking her wounds and plotting her revenge. Lily was there at the gate when they rode in. One look at Caleb's expression told her everything. "You found it. We found it. And it's enough." A flicker of real hope the first Caleb had seen in her lit up Lily's face. Enough to make them pay. Enough to try. They all met in Brennan's office. It was Caleb, Brennan, Constance, and Lily. The papers were spread out on the table, looking like exhibits in a courtroom. Lily peered at them with that serious gaze of hers. She couldn't make out all the fancy lawyer talk, but she got the gist. These are the people Mama was going after. Yes, and now we can prove it. We can prove it. The real question is, what are we going to do about it? We take it to a judge, Lily said, just like Mama wanted to. Brennan just shook his head. Every judge in Arizona is in someone's pocket. Then we'll go somewhere else. Lily's voice didn't waver. We'll go to Santa Fe, to that honest prosecutor you were talking about. That's a 3-day ride through rough country, Constance pointed out. And Vivian will be on our trail. So we won't be running. Lily looked straight at each one of them. We'll be fighting. You're only 9 years old, and I'm the one who saw it happen. Without me, these are just pieces of paper. Lily put her hand on the documents. But with me, with what I saw, they're the truth. Caleb felt a surge of pride mixed with a cold shot of fear. She's not wrong. She's a child, Brennan argued. I'm the child they came to kill. Lily's eyes were like hard stones. I'm the child who is not going to let her mama and papa die for nothing. So we are doing this. The only thing left to decide is if you are brave enough to come with me. You could have heard a pin drop in that room. Finally, Constance broke the silence. I'm going with you. 3 heads whipped around to look at her. I am not about to let a 9-year-old girl and 2 grown men ride into that kind of trouble without someone who has a lick of sense. Constance said it like it was the simplest thing in the world. Besides, I can handle a rifle, I can patch up wounds, and I'm expendable in a way y'all are not. You are not expendable, Brennan said, his voice low. To the army, yes, I am. Constance gave her husband a small smile. But to that little girl, I might be just what she needs. A woman who can be there for her. Someone who knows that being brave isn't about not being scared. It's about being scared to death and saddling up anyway. Lily walked over to Constance and took her hand. Will you teach me how to shoot? Constance looked down at the small, determined girl. I'll teach you how to stay alive. Then I'm ready. Caleb watched them and knew right then that the matter was settled. Not by him, and not by Brennan, but by a 9-year-old girl who had lost it all and wasn't about to lose anything else. We ride out at dawn, he announced. A small party, fast horses. We don't let up till we hit Santa Fe. I'll get you an escort, Brennan offered. My very best men. No. Caleb shook his head. 4 people are a lot harder to track than a whole platoon. And we can't afford to have military men captured with this evidence. That would make it a government matter before we're ready for it to be. So it's just the 4 of us. Just us. Brennan looked over at his wife. Constance, you don't have to do this. Yes, I do. She squeezed his hand gently. Somebody's got to make sure you fools don't get yourselves killed. Later that night, Caleb found Lily sitting on the fort wall, just looking up at the stars. He climbed up and sat next to her, letting the quiet hang in the air for a bit. Are you afraid? She asked. Scared. But you are going anyway. We have to. You made a powerful case for it. Lily offered a small smile. Mama always told her, the best weapon you have is the truth. Papa used to say, the best weapon is the truth, with some guns to back it up. They were both right. Are we going to die? The question came out straight, with no fear in her eyes. Caleb owed her the respect of an honest answer. We might. The folks we are up against are dangerous. They have killed people before, and they will do it again if they get the half a chance. But we are going anyway. Yes, why? Because, Caleb said, his words coming slowly. Some things are worth dying for. Things like justice, the truth, and protecting people who cannot protect themselves. Your mama and papa believed that. They acted on it, and they were right, even though it cost them everything they had. For a long moment, Lily did not say a word. Then, I am glad you found me. I am glad, too, even if we die, even then. She leaned into him, feeling small and warm, and braver than anyone he had ever known. Caleb wrapped his arm around her. This little girl was not his own, but she might as well have been. Tomorrow they would ride straight into danger. They would come face to face with killers, corruption, and odds that seemed impossible to beat. But tonight, beneath stars that had seen countless fights and countless victories, a broken man and a hurt child discovered something they both figured was gone for good. Hope. And in the blackness outside the fort's walls, Vivian Gaines was plotting her revenge, not knowing that the weapon she was most afraid of was not some piece of paper or some story told in court. It was the solid iron will of a 9-year-old girl who had made up her mind that the truth was more important than being safe. The girl in the dust was now the girl who refused to break, and Lord help anybody who got in her way. Dawn broke cold over Fort Dennis. Caleb Rorick was in the stable checking the saddles in their gear with the careful attention of a man who knew that a tiny mistake out in the wilderness could get you killed. 4 horses, 4 riders, and 3 days of hard country lay between them and Santa Fe. 3 days with Vivian Gaines on their trail. Lily showed up in the stable doorway, wearing practical riding clothes that Constance had taken in to fit her small body. She looked impossibly young in the pale morning light, but her eyes had that same look of steel. "Are we ready?" "Almost." Caleb checked the cinch on her saddle just one more time. "You remember what we talked about? Stay close. Do what you are told without arguing. If the shooting starts, find cover." Lily recited it like a school lesson. "And trust you to keep me safe. That last part is the most important one." "I know." Constance Brennan came in next, holding a rifle with the kind of easy comfort that comes from carrying one for a long time. She had on split riding skirts and a man's shirt, practical for a hard ride. Her hair was pulled back tight. Everything about her screamed that she was ready for a fight. "Isaiah wants a word with you," she told Caleb, "before we head out." Caleb found Captain Brennan in his office looking down at a map of the territory. The older man looked like he had not slept a wink. "You do not have to do this," Brennan said, getting straight to the point. "Yes, I do. You could just leave the evidence with me. Let me send it up through the proper channels. We both know that would just get it buried or lost, or it would conveniently get destroyed." Caleb walked over to the map. "This whole thing only works if we hand it directly to someone who cannot be bought. Federal Prosecutor James Whitmore in Santa Fe." Brennan tapped the city on the map. "He is the most honest man in the whole territory. But reaching him means you have to get past Vivian. She has already lost men. She is wounded and desperate, and that just makes her more dangerous, not less." Brennan turned away from the map. "Constance is the only family I have left. If anything happens to her because of this crusade of yours, then you will have lost 2 people to the same fight." Caleb looked him square in the eye. "But if we do not go, if we do not even try, then Margaret died for nothing, and Lily will spend the rest of her life looking over her shoulder." Brennan's silence hung in the air as he thought about the decision. At last he gave a slow nod. "I have set up supply caches for you along the route. Every 50 miles there is food, water, and ammunition. They are all marked on this map." He handed Caleb a folded piece of paper. Caleb looked over the route. It stayed away from the main roads, sticking to rough country where a small group could travel, quicker than a big one. It's a 3-day ride if the weather's on our side, maybe 2.5 if you really push it. Brennan paused. "There's something else you need to know." A wire came in this morning from Tucson. Those boys who escaped the mission, they made it out. The federal marshals are looking into Father Salazar's death. That sounds like good news. It ought to be. Except the marshal on the case is a man named Robert Chen. Turns out Chen and Lawrence Gaines served together in the war. They go way back. Caleb swore under his breath. So even the federal marshals are dirty. It's possible, which means you have to get that proof to Whitmore before Chen has a chance to mess things up, before Gaines gets wind of what's happening and starts calling in favors. How much time do you think we have? A week, maybe not even that. Then we'd better ride like the wind. They all gathered in the courtyard as the morning sun peeked over the mountains. Sergeant Cooper stood by with a dozen soldiers, a sort of honor guard. It was more fuss than Caleb wanted, but Brennan insisted. Isaiah Brennan stood in front of his wife, struggling to find the right words. In the end, he just pulled her into a tight hug. "You come back to me. That's the plan." Constance kissed him. "But if I don't, I need you to know that I chose this, that it meant something. Everything you do means something." They broke apart. Brennan turned to Lily, crouching down to her height. "You are a very brave young lady. Your mother would be so proud." Lily looked at him. "Seriously, are you going to be all right when we leave? I'll be right here waiting for you, and when you get back, we're going to have a talk about family, about what it means to be an uncle who doesn't ride off. I think I'd like that." Caleb shook Brennan's hand. "If you don't hear from us in 10 days, you should expect the worst. I'll give you 12. After that, I'm coming to find you with this entire fort at my back. Fair enough?" They rode out the main gates while the soldiers stood tall. Caleb took the lead on his black gelding, Soot, with Lily on a smaller bay mare. Constance was on a strong roan, and a pack horse trailed behind with their gear. They started at a good pace, covering ground while the horses were still eager. Behind them, Fort Dennis slowly shrank into the distance. Ahead of them, the vast wilderness lay waiting. The first day went by with no trouble. They followed the map Brennan gave them, riding through country that got wilder with every mile. Red rock canyons turned into pine-covered hills, which then opened up into high desert plains. The land had a severe kind of beauty, completely unconcerned with the problems of people. They set up camp that evening in a small, protected canyon, building a small fire just big enough for a hot meal. Lily was worn out, but she was trying her best not to let it show. Constance saw it, though. "You did a fine job today. 15 hours on horseback is a tough ride for anybody. I can keep up. I know you can. But there's no shame in saying you're tired." Lily was silent for a second. "If I say I'm tired, does that mean we stop?" "No, we just keep moving." "But knowing your own limits helps you manage them." Lily nodded, taking that in. She ate her beans and hardtack without a word, then curled up in her bedroll close to the fire. In just a few minutes, she was fast asleep. Constance watched her with a softness in her eyes. She is so young. Too young for all this. Caleb tossed another piece of wood on the fire. But she is right. Without her testimony, the evidence is just a stack of papers. Do you think she can go through with it? Testifying in a courtroom, facing them all over again? I think she is the strongest person I have ever met. But that does not mean this will not hurt her. Constance picked up her rifle and started cleaning it with practiced skill. I was 17 when I signed up as a nurse. Apache campaign of 74 and 75. I saw things that nobody should ever have to see. Boys barely older than Lily, all shot to pieces. Men crying out for their mothers who were 1,000 miles away. Oh, why are you telling me this? Because I learned something during those years. Constance sighted down the clean barrel. Strength is not about never breaking. It is about what you become after you have been broken. Lily is already broken. The real question is what she will build from all the pieces. And what do you think she will build? Something a whole lot tougher than whatever broke her. Constance put the rifle down. I just hope she does not lose herself along the way. That is why we are here, to make sure she gets a choice. They took turns standing watch. Caleb had the first shift, sitting with his back against a boulder and his rifle resting across his lap. The stars turned in the sky above in their endless dance. Somewhere out in that darkness, Vivian Gaines was making plans, hunting them, and getting closer. He was ready for her. The second day brought their first real sign of trouble. They were crossing a narrow valley when Caleb spotted the dust. Riders, maybe 5 miles behind them, moving fast. They were moving way too fast to be anything but a posse in pursuit. "We have got company." Constance shielded her eyes with her hand. "How many?" "Cannot tell yet, but they are gaining on us." "What do we do?" Lily's voice was steady and controlled. "We run." Caleb pointed toward a ridge of hills off to the east. "There is some rough country over that way. We can lose them in there if we are smart. And if we cannot, then we fight." They spurred the horses on, racing toward the broken land. The riders behind them matched their speed, slowly but surely closing the gap. Caleb could start to make out some details now. 4 riders, no, 5. And at the front of them he saw a flash of a green dress. Vivian. She had found them a lot quicker than he had figured, which meant she had help. Somebody at the fort, or somebody out there watching the trails. It did not matter now. The only thing that mattered was staying alive. They hit the hills and dove into a tangled maze of canyons. Caleb knew this part of the country from his days as a marshal. He knew all the hidden passes and the box canyons that could trap anyone who was not careful. He led them deeper and deeper, picking paths that would slow down anyone on horseback. Behind them, the sounds of the pursuing horses bounced off the stone walls. They were close. They came out into a little valley with a creek snaking right through it. It was a good place to defend with high ground on three sides, but that also meant it could turn into a trap right quick if they got themselves surrounded. "We're making our stand here," Caleb decided. "Constance, you get Lily up on that ridge. Find some cover." "What about you?" Lily asked, her voice tight. "I am going to slow them down some," Caleb told her. Lily started to argue, but he cut her off. "No arguments. Remember what you promised." Lily's jaw tightened up, but she gave a firm nod. She and Constance hustled up the rocky slope, leading their horses. Caleb found himself a spot behind a big boulder where he could see clear down the valley. He did not have to wait long. The first rider came into view, moving slow and careful, scanning for an ambush. Caleb let him ride on by. The second and third followed him. Then came Vivian herself, still wearing that green dress, though now it was torn and covered in dust. But you could not mistake her. "Marshal Roar," she called out. "I know you are in here. I can smell the fear on you." Caleb stayed quiet. "This is all for nothing, you know. You can run all the way to Santa Fe. You can run down to Mexico. It just does not matter." Vivian swung down from her horse, looking confident as you please, even though she was in the perfect spot for an ambush. "Lawrence Gaines owns this whole territory. He owns the judges, the marshals, and every last politician. You are fighting a war you have already lost." Caleb's finger was resting on the trigger. He could end it all right now, just one shot. But putting her down would not stop Gaines. It would not bring any justice. It would just make him a killer. Still no answer. Vivian let out a laugh. The strong, silent type. How boring. "Very well, then. Let us make this a little more interesting." She gave him that cold, empty smile of hers. "Your little pet is so trusting. Believes in all those crosses and prayers and justice. Such a sweet child. It would be a real shame if something happened to her faith, or maybe her life." Caleb's blood ran cold as ice. "Here is what is going to happen," Vivian went on. "You are going to give me the real evidence this time. In return, I will let the child live. You and the woman can even go on your way. I do not care about y'all. I only care about protecting my husband. Your husband is a murderer. My husband is a survivor, just like I am." Vivian's smile vanished. "You think you are so righteous. You think you are the hero of this story. You are nothing but a washed-up marshal who failed his own daughter. Now you are playing protector because you cannot face your own guilt." Her words hit him harder than any bullet could. "I looked into you, Marshal Roar. Anna, was it not, 7 years old? Died while you were off chasing outlaws for a paycheck. Some father you were." Caleb's hands gripped his rifle tighter. "And now you have latched onto another little girl, trying to rewrite your own history, trying to save the daughter you let die. But you cannot, Marshal. The past does not change. And this girl, she is going to die too, just like Anna, unless you get smart. Give me the evidence." Caleb stood up slow, his rifle pointed at the ground. He stepped out from behind his cover. Vivian's smile came right back. "That is sensible. I knew you were a smart man, smart enough to know when you are lying." Caleb's voice was flat as a skillet. "You will kill us all whether I give you the evidence or not. That is true. But I will make it quick if you cooperate. That is more mercy than you deserve." The gunshot cracked from the ridge high above them. Constance Brennan had taken the shot, and it was perfect. The bullet hit Vivian in the shoulder, spinning her clean around. Her men reacted in a flash, firing back, but they were caught out in the open against folks on high ground. Caleb added his own fire to the mix, steady and sure. One of Vivian's men crumpled to the ground. Another one's horse got hit, and it threw him hard. The last two grabbed Vivian and pulled back in a panic, shooting wild as they ran. In just a few seconds, they were gone, leaving behind one dead man and a wounded horse. Caleb scrambled up the ridge. Constance was reloading her rifle, her face set like stone. Lily stood behind her, looking pale but holding steady. "Nice shot," Caleb said. "I was aiming for her heart." Constance ejected the empty cartridge. "I am out of practice. You winged her, he said. That will slow her down. They gathered up the horses and got moving right away. Staying in one place after a gunfight was just asking for trouble. They rode hard for 2 hours, putting some real distance between them and anybody who might be following. Finally, as the sun started to dip low, they stopped to give the horses a rest. Lily had been quiet that whole time. Now she finally spoke up, her hand touching her throat where the cross still hung. She threatened me, just like she threatened Mama. I know, Caleb said. But she failed then, and she will fail now. It does not matter now. It matters to me. It was Mama's. Caleb knelt down beside her. Your Mama's memory is not in that cross, Lily. It is inside you. It is in your courage and in your grit to see this thing through. Lily's eyes were shiny with tears she refused to let fall. She said terrible things about you, about Anna. I know she did. Were they true? Some of them were. Caleb did not look away. I was away from home when Anna died, and I do carry a heavy weight for that. But Vivian was wrong about one thing. What was that? I am not trying to replace Anna. I am trying to be the kind of man she deserved for a father. The man I was not back then. He put a hand on Lily's shoulder. And you are not a replacement. You are you, and you are someone worth protecting for exactly who you are. Lily nodded slowly. Then I am glad you are here. Me too. Constance watched them, her expression softening. Well then, we better make sure we all survive to see Santa Fe. The third day took them up into higher country. Pine forests took the place of all that desert scrub. The air got cooler and sweeter. They were close now. Just one more push, and they would be in federal territory. But Vivian was not done with them yet. The attack came around midday. Not from behind them like they figured, but from up ahead. An ambush set in a narrow canyon pass. Gunfire exploded from both sides. Caleb's horse let out a scream and went down, throwing him hard to the ground. He rolled, coming up with his rifle in his hand, and started shooting back. Constance and Lily were pinned down behind some rocks, their horses scattered. And walking down that canyon straight toward them, not hurrying at all despite the bullets flying, was Vivian Gaines. Her shoulder was bandaged up and her green dress was soaked in blood, but she walked like death itself with a revolver in each hand. This is the end of the line, Marshal. Caleb fired and missed, then fired again. He shot one of Vivian's guns right out of her hand, but she just kept on coming. You are a tough one, I will give you that. Vivian's other gun came up. But being tough only puts off what is bound to happen. The shot that saved Caleb's life came from a place he never expected. A rifle cracked from high up on the canyon wall. The bullet took Vivian in the leg, dropping her to her knees. Her men turned toward this new shooter, all confused. And then Sergeant Cooper appeared up on the ridge with a dozen soldiers behind him. Cooper's voice boomed right across the canyon. This is the United States Army. Lay down your weapons. We will have you all court-martialed, Vivian spat. This changes nothing. Lawrence will have you all court-martialed. This was an illegal operation on territorial land. This is a federal pursuit of murder suspects. Cooper's voice was hard as iron. And you just got caught red-handed. You have no proof. We have enough, including the testimony of 3 civilian witnesses who saw you murder Father Salazar. Vivian's laughter choked in her throat. Her face went cold and calculating. Then I want to make a deal. No deals, Caleb said. Vivian looked straight at him. You want Lawrence? I will give him to you. Everything, every crime, every bribe, every single murder. I will testify against him in exchange for immunity. Why in the world would we make a deal with you? Because I can give you the whole network, not just Lawrence. Every judge, every official, every businessman in his pocket. Vivian's voice was getting desperate. I can tear down the whole corrupt system. Is that not what you want? What I want is justice for the people you killed. Justice is a fairy tale. Vivian struggled to get back on her feet despite her wounds. The only thing that matters in this world is power, and I am offering you the power to bring them all down. All you have to do is let me walk away. Caleb looked over at Lily. The girl stood there with Constance's arm around her, watching Vivian with those wise old eyes. "What do you think?" Caleb asked her. Lily thought about it for a moment, her face serious. "Mama would not make that deal. Papa would not either. They believed some things were just plain wrong, no matter what you could get out of it. Even if it means we might not get everyone. Even then." Caleb turned back to Vivian. "You heard the lady. She is just a child. She is the person you tried to kill, and she just decided your fate." Caleb nodded to Cooper. "Take her into custody. Federal charges, murder of a priest, attempted murder of federal witnesses, conspiracy. Every last thing you can. Stack." A storm of pure fury twisted Vivian's face. "You are making a terrible mistake. Lawrence is going to ruin you. He can sure as heck try." While the soldiers led Vivian off, Lily walked over to Caleb's side. "Did I do the right thing?" "You did exactly what your folks would have wanted. That's always the right path, even when it's the hardest one, especially then." They made it to Santa Fe 2 days later, with Cooper's soldiers riding alongside them. The city was bigger than anything Lily had ever laid eyes on. Buildings made of adobe and wood climbed up the hillsides, and church bells were chiming the hour. It was civilization after so many days in the wild country. Federal prosecutor James Whitmore met them in his office, a simple room where law books packed every single wall. He looked to be about 50, with graying hair and a face that told you he'd seen every kind of human wickedness, but somehow still held on to hope. "Well now, Marshal Cooper, I got Captain Brennan's telegram." Whitmore pointed toward some chairs. "Please, have a seat." Caleb handed him the leather pouch. "It is all documented in there. 5 years of proof, fraud, bribery, and murder." Whitmore opened it up, real careful-like, and started looking through the papers. His face got more and more grim. "Good Lord, this is worse than I ever imagined. Can you prosecute him?" "I can give it my best shot. But Lawrence Gaines has a lot of money. He has friends way up in Washington. This is going to be the fight of my life. You will also have Vivian Gaines in your custody." Caleb leaned in. "She is hurt, mad as a hornet, and feels betrayed. You need to work on her, get her to turn on him. She has already offered to speak against her own husband." A faint smile touched Whitmore's lips. "It seems loyalty does not stretch too far when you are looking at the gallows. Then you have all you need. Almost." Whitmore turned his gaze to Lily. "I am going to need the little girl's testimony in open court." "Can she do that?" Lily spoke up before Caleb had a chance. "I can do it." Whitmore looked her over for a long moment. "Do you understand what that means? You will have to tell everyone what you saw. You will have to answer questions from defense lawyers who will try to twist your words and make you doubt your own mind. I know what I saw." Lily's voice was firm. "And I will not tell a lie about it. In that case, we have a real fighting chance." The trial got started 3 weeks later. It was a federal court with a federal judge and a jury brought in from all over the territory. Whitmore had moved quick, knowing that any delay would just give Gaines time to stir up trouble. Lawrence Gaines sat at the defense table, surrounded by his high-dollar lawyers. He was a big fella, dressed sharp, with the kind of face that made you think of honest work and a firm handshake. Just by looking at him, you would never guess he was a killer. Right next to him, in chains, sat Vivian. Neither one of them looked at the other. The prosecution laid out its case step by steady step. They showed documents of fake land claims. They had bank records that proved the bribes. They had families of the victims come and tell their stories. Every piece of evidence was just another nail in Gaines's coffin. On the 4th day, Vivian took the stand. She was wearing a plain gray prison dress. All her fancy airs were gone, but her voice was still as cold and clear as a winter morning. "State your name for the court." "Vivian Grace Gaines." "And how are you related to the defendant?" "I am his wife and his partner in business." Vivian's eyes locked onto Lawrence. Or at least I was, until he decided I was disposable. A murmur went through the courtroom. Whitmore walked closer. "Mrs. Gaines, you have agreed to testify for a lighter sentence, is that right?" "Yes. Tell us what happened to the Mercer family." Vivian's account was cold and full of details. She explained how Lawrence found out that Joseph Mercer was collecting evidence, how he ordered the whole family to be wiped out, and how Vivian herself led the attack because Lawrence wanted it done proper. "I offered them a way out," Vivian said. "I told Joseph to burn all those papers. He said no, so I did what had to be done. You murdered 6 people. I was protecting my husband's business, a fact he seems to have conveniently forgotten." The defense lawyer, a slick talker named Carver, tried to paint her as unreliable. "You are just a woman who's been scorned, is that it? Upset with your husband? I am a woman who will not hang by herself for crimes that we did together. You want this court to believe you killed people just because your husband told you to? I want this court to look at the proof, the money, the forged papers, and the trail of dead bodies." Vivian's voice was like ice. "Lawrence Gaines built himself a kingdom on stealing and killing. I was just the tool he used, but he was the one holding the knife." Lawrence Gaines' face did not change one bit, but his hands tightened into fists. On the 6th day, it was Lily's turn. Whitmore had tried to prepare her, but nothing can truly get a 9-year-old ready for a moment like this. She walked to the witness stand in a new dress Constance had bought for her, white with little blue flowers. Her red hair was in a braid. She looked so impossibly small up there. "Please tell the court your name, Lily Mercer. And how old are you, Lily?" 9.5. A wave of sympathy washed over the people in the courtroom. Whitmore's voice was gentle. "Lily, I have to ask you about the morning your family died. Can you tell us what you remember?" Lily's little hands clutched the railing of the witness box. "We were at our ranch. Papa woke me up before the sun came up. He told me I had to hide under the wagon. He was scared. I could see it in his eyes. What happened after that? Riders came. I heard their horses, and then I heard voices, a woman's voice telling Papa he had a choice to make. Do you see that woman here in this courtroom?" Lily's eyes found Vivian. "That is her, the lady who smells like roses. Let the record show that the witness has identified Vivian Gaines." Whitmore took a breath. "What did the woman say to your father?" "She said he made the wrong choice. Papa begged her to let me live. He said I was just a little girl. She said nobody was innocent. And then what happened?" Lily's voice trembled just a little. "She shot him. I heard Mama scream, and then there were more gunshots. Then it all just went quiet." The defense lawyer Carver jumped to his feet. "Objection. The witness has already said she was hiding under a wagon. She could not have possibly seen the shooting." "But I heard it," Lily said before the judge could even say a word. "I heard everything. The gunshots, Mama crying out for Papa, the lady who smelled like roses telling her men to burn it all down." Judge Harrison leaned over the bench. "The witness can continue." Whitmore moved closer again, his voice soft. "Lily, I know this is real hard. I just have a few more questions. Did you ever see the defendant, Lawrence Gaines, that morning?" Lily paused for a moment. "No, I did not see him." A low murmur spread through the courtroom. Gaines's lawyer cracked a smile. "But," Lily went on, "I heard the lady say his name. She said, 'Lawrence wants this done clean. No witnesses, no evidence, hearsay.'" Carver shouted his objection. "That is a statement made by a co-conspirator," Whitmore shot back. "It is allowed under federal rules." Judge Harrison gave a nod. "Overruled. The witness can go on." Lily looked right at Lawrence Gaines for the very first time. He stared right back at her, his face like a stone mask. "Is there anything else you remember?" Lily's hand went up to her neck, touching the spot where her little cross used to be. "Mama told me once that bad men think no one can touch them, that they believe their money and power will keep them safe. But she said the truth is stronger than power, and that one day the truth always wins. Your mother was a very wise woman. She was brave." Lily's voice grew stronger. She spent 5 years gathering up proof against people who could have had her killed any day. She did it because it was the right thing to do. And now I am here telling the truth because that is what she would have wanted me to do. The courtroom was completely still. Carver's cross-examination was mean. He questioned Lily's memory. He questioned if she could really tell voices apart, and if someone had told her what to say. But Lily did not back down. She answered every question with a calm and steady voice, never adding anything, never changing her story. Finally, Carver tried his last trick. "Miss Mercer, is it not true that you are just looking for revenge? That you are so angry about what happened to your parents that you would say anything to hurt the people you think are to blame?" "I am not angry." Lily's voice was soft. "I am sad, and I am very tired. But most of all, I am determined. I am determined to make sure my mama and papa did not die for nothing. So this is all about giving their death some meaning. This is about the truth." Lily looked right at the jury. "My parents died trying to show everyone the corruption. They gathered evidence. They did everything by the law, and they were murdered for it. If that does not matter, if powerful people can just kill folks and not face any consequences, then what is the point of even having laws?" The question just hung there in the quiet room. "No more questions," Carver said, his voice low. Lily was told she could step down. As she walked past the defense table, Lawrence Gaines leaned toward her. "You are going to regret this, little girl." His voice was just a faint whisper, but Lily heard him loud and clear. She stopped and turned to look him in the eye. "No. You are the one who is going to regret what you did to my family." Then she turned and walked away with her head held high, as the whole courtroom watched in a state of shock. The trial went on for 2 more days. The closing arguments from both sides were powerful, but the evidence was just too much to ignore. There were the documents, the testimony, and the most powerful of all, a 9-year-old girl who had lived through a massacre and refused to be quiet. The jury was out for 6 hours. When they came back, the foreman stood up. His voice was heavy. "On the charge of conspiracy to commit fraud, we find the defendant Lawrence Gaines guilty. On the charge of bribery of federal officials, guilty. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder in the deaths of Joseph and Margaret Mercer, Robert and Martha Brennan, Michael Brennan, and 2 unidentified travelers, guilty." The courtroom erupted. Judge Harrison banged his gavel for order. Lawrence Gaines just sat there, not moving a muscle, as his whole empire fell to pieces around him. The sentencing happened 2 days later. Judge Harrison went through everything. He listed every crime, every victim, and the deep-rooted corruption that had poisoned the territory for so many years. "Lawrence Gaines, you have been found guilty of crimes that attack the very soul of a civil society. You used your power to get rich by cheating honest folks. You ordered the deaths of who stood in your way. You corrupted the very institutions meant to protect people from men exactly like you." Gaines stared straight ahead, his face a mask. "The law demands punishment. Society demands justice. The victims, both living and dead, demand accountability." Harrison's voice grew harder. "On the fraud and bribery charges, I sentence you to 20 years of hard labor. On the conspiracy to murder charges, I sentence you to life in prison without the possibility of parole." Gaines's face finally broke, showing first shock, then pure rage. "You will spend the rest of your days in a federal prison thinking about the lives you destroyed and the trust you broke." Harrison then looked at Lily in the gallery. "And maybe you will think about the 9-year-old girl who proved to be braver than you ever were." The marshals led Gaines away. He looked back one time, his eyes locking onto Lily. The hatred in his gaze was a physical thing. Lily met it without even flinching. Vivian was sentenced next. Her cooperation got her some consideration, but it did not get her mercy. "Vivian Gaines, you took part in multiple murders. You led the attack that killed 6 people, including children. Your testimony against your husband proves you know the difference between right and wrong. You simply chose wrong time and time again." Vivian's face was like stone. "I sentence you to death by hanging, the sentence to be carried out in 60 days. For the first time, Vivian showed pure human terror." "Your Honor," she tried to say, "you had your shot at mercy when you let Joseph Mercer and his family live. You picked death. Now you get the same." Harrison's gavel hit the wood. "Court's over." Outside, Caleb and Lily stood in the bright afternoon sun. Constance had her arm wrapped tight around the little girl. Sergeant Cooper and his boys stood a ways off, still making sure everything was safe. "It's all done," Lily said. She didn't sound too sure, like she couldn't quite wrap her head around it. "The trial is finished." Caleb knelt down to her level. "Justice was done today. Your folks would be mighty proud. What comes next for you? Now, you just get to be a kid. You'll go to school, make some friends, and live your life without always looking over your shoulder." "And what about you?" Caleb paused for a moment. "I don't rightly know. I ain't thought past today." "You could stay here with me," Lily offered, "if you'd like." The idea just hung there in the air, full of possibilities. Constance finally spoke up. "Isaiah's been asking about being your guardian. He wants to be in your life, Lily, as your kin." "But not my only kin," Lily said, looking straight at Caleb. "Right." Caleb felt something give way inside his chest. That old crack getting a little wider, letting some light in. "Right, if you'll have me." "As what?" "As whatever you need me to be. A guardian, a protector." He swallowed hard. "A father, if you'll let me." Lily's smile was small, but it was real. The first true smile he'd ever seen on her face. "I'd like that." And just like that, it was settled. Constance gave Lily's shoulder a gentle squeeze. "You'll stay with me and Isaiah at the fort till Caleb gets a place of his own. We'll be a family, all of us together." All of us. 6 months down the road, Caleb was standing on the porch of a little ranch about 20 miles outside of Santa Fe. It wasn't the Mercer place. That land had too many ghosts walking it. This was fresh ground, clean and full of what could be. The house wasn't fancy, but it was solid. The corrals held a few horses Caleb was breaking to sell. A little vegetable garden was fighting the high desert heat, but it was showing promise. It was good, honest work, the kind of simple work that lets a man sleep easy at night. Lily came out of the barn, leading a young mare by the rope. She'd grown in those 6 months, filling out the hollow places that sorrow had carved. She still had bad dreams some nights, and she'd still jump at a loud noise, but she was healing. "She's ready," Lily announced. "I reckon we can sell her next week." "You sure about that?" Caleb walked down the steps to look the horse over. "She's still a little skittish. She trusts me. That's what matters." Caleb had to smile. "When did you get to be the horse expert?" "You taught me," Lily said, stroking the mare's neck. "You said trust is built slow. It's the same with horses as it is with people." "Smart kid." "I learned from the best." A wagon appeared on the road from Santa Fe. It was Isaiah and Constance Brennan making their weekly visit. They'd become steady parts of Lily's life, an uncle and aunt for real, even if the papers didn't say so yet. Isaiah was carrying a basket from Constance's kitchen. That woman was bound and determined to fatten them both up with her cooking. "How's my favorite niece?" Isaiah called out. "Your only niece," Lily called back, but she was grinning from ear to ear. They all gathered up on the porch, sharing food and telling stories, falling into the easy quiet of folks who've been through a fight together and come out the other side. Lily showed Constance her new drawings. They weren't the dark pictures from before, but pictures of the land and the horses, and the future she was starting to build for herself. As the sun started to dip low, painting the mountains gold and purple, Caleb found himself thinking about Anna, his first little girl, gone way too soon. The hurt was still there, and it probably always would be, but it didn't eat him alive anymore. Anna's death had taught him all about losing someone. But Lily, she had taught him about second chances. "You're thinking about her," Lily said in a soft voice. She had come to stand right beside him. "How'd you know?" "You get a certain look on your face. Sad, but peaceful-like." "Is it all right that I still think about her?" "Of course it is. Lily leaned her head against his arm. Just like I still think about my mama and papa. We don't ever forget the people we lose. We just learn how to carry the memory of them better. When did you get so dang wise? I had good teachers. They stood there together while the first stars started to pop out in the sky. Behind them, Constance and Isaiah were laughing at some old joke. The horses rustled in the corral. The world just kept on turning, not caring one bit about human pain, but also not caring about human joy. Caleb, Lily said. Yes? Thank you. For finding me. For not leaving me behind. For choosing to stay. Thank you for trusting me. For being so brave. For reminding me what really matters. They watched the last of the sun fade away in a comfortable silence. Two souls who had lost everything and somehow found each other in all the mess. Not a replacement for what was gone, but something brand new. Something worth protecting. Back in Santa Fe, Lawrence Gaines was sitting in a federal prison cell. His whole empire had crumbled, and his name would only be remembered for corruption and murder. He would die in that place, with no one to mourn him, and be forgotten. Down in Tucson, Vivian Gaines had been hanged 2 months before. No one wrote down her last words, and no one mourned her neither. The territory just moved on, like it always does, burying its ugly secrets under new ones and new hopes. But on that little ranch outside Santa Fe, a broken man and a hurt little girl were building something the corrupt could never hope to touch. A family made not by blood, but by choice, by courage, and by the stubborn belief that good folks ought to win out, that justice could be found, and that love was a whole lot stronger than hate. Lily Mercer would grow up safe. She'd go to school, make friends, and learn to laugh without fear. The nightmares would fade, the scars would stay, but they'd just be a part of her story, not the whole thing. And Caleb Rohr, who had failed one daughter but found his way back by protecting another, would spend the rest of his days making sure she knew she was loved, that she mattered, and that she was safe. The little girl lost in the dust had found her voice. The man who found her had found his purpose. And together, they had proved that the truth, no matter how much it hurts, is always worth fighting for. The desert wind seemed to carry their words away. A father and daughter standing on a porch, watching one day end and the next one begin. Behind them, their family gathered. Ahead of them, a future they couldn't see but knew was full of hope. And somewhere in that fading light, the spirits of Margaret and Joseph Mercer looked down and smiled. Their daughter was safe. What they gave up had meant something. Justice had been done. And in the end, love had won the day. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every narrative is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. We believe that great stories can change lives, and we are committed to bringing you content that matters. Thank you for being part of our community.